Welcome to The Clean Slate, a podcast where we chat about facilities management, commercial cleaning, and keeping the working world safe, clean, efficient, and free from risk. I'm your host, Trista Sobek. Hello, and welcome to The Clean Slate. This is Trista Sobek, and today we have a treat on the show. We have Dean Stanberry, who is the global chairman of the board of IFMA, an organization dedicated to expanding facilities management and what it means to be a facilities manager. And Dean has a very interesting story where he kind of, I don't want to say fell into it, but he was at a place where his company needed somebody to oversee facilities, and he was there, and he said, okay, I'll do it. So in this episode, Dean talks to us about what that means. He talks about working from home and how the pandemic has changed facilities management. And also we talk a little bit about technology and what that means. So without further ado, Dean Stanberry. Today we are lucky enough to have Dean Stanberry, who is chairman of IFMA Global Board of Directors, and he has quite the history. He's probably held every position in facilities management that you can think of, and we're going to learn a little bit about the history and the future of facilities management and how somebody can get into the industry if they so choose, because there are a lot of options there, which is really exciting. So welcome, Dean, to The Clean Slate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Trista. It's my honor to be here today. So thank you for the invitation.
Of course, of course. So can you tell us a little bit about, so as of July 1st, as I understand, you have become the chairman of the Global Board of Directors for IFMA. Can you tell us what that means and what that means for you?
Okay, IFMA has been around for a while. It's a professional association. So we focus on supporting our members who are facility managers or associate members who are working industries kind of supporting, facility management and building operations and things like that. So IFMA is global. We have chapters which are geographic in nature. We have councils that are sort of like aligned with industry verticals. And then we have communities which are kind of cross-cutting topics such as sustainability, climate change, information technology, things like that kind of cut across a lot of the industry verticals. So we have about just over 24,000 members worldwide, and we are the largest facility management focused association in the world. And headquartered in Houston, Texas, but we're in 110 countries, I believe, just over 140 chapters.
Very nice, very nice. And can you talk a little bit about how you specifically got into facilities management? I know a little bit of the story, like you told us earlier, how you kind of fell into it happily, and how you've evolved over the years. I think that's a very interesting story, especially for people who may not understand that facilities management is a career path.
Certainly. Well, let me tell you my accidental profession story. So facility management for a long time was known as the accidental profession because nobody ever started out to be a facility manager and kind of, fell into it. I've actually had two careers. I spent about 22 years in IT, running large-scale data centers for a telecom company. And one of my last roles there was working for the chief information officer, kind of as a staff manager, which meant I did everything that nobody else wanted to do. One day, the real estate organization was going around to all the departments within the company and saying, we're going to give you back responsibility for the space that your department occupies to, the day-to-day operation of that. So you need to get somebody to run that. So the CIO looks over at me and goes, you used to run data centers. That's kind of like real estate. Here, take this. And I just did what he asked. So I said, okay, well, what do we got? And he goes, I don't know, go ask the real estate guys. So in that moment, what I figured out is that I had inherited about 5 million square feet of administrative space, 1.5 million square feet of data centers, and a bunch of people spread across 14 states. So I went back and said, this is kind of a full-time job, right? He said, well, let's figure out what it really takes, and then we'll decide what to do from there. Long story short, I ended up owning that responsibility, and I had run critical infrastructure, so I was very familiar with that, but I not really run office buildings. And so I figured I needed to learn a little bit more about that. And that's when I went out and I found the International Facility Management Association. And I joined the Denver chapter. And one day at one of the meetings, I was taking classes and so forth. And I was in a meeting and they said, we need some help with some of our committees. Anybody want to raise their hand? So one of them was the website committee. And I was probably the only person that had much technical background, so I raised my hand on that. And fast forward, I'm now chairman of the global organization. So it was sort of like eating potato chips. Once I got started raising my hand, I guess I couldn't stop.
Can't stop. And what year was this? Just to kind of lay context to where we are in time as far as technology.
Let's just say it was in the last century.
Well, and we're moving so quickly when it comes to technology and facilities management, and especially technology and facilities management.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about if somebody wants to get into facilities management, or say there's somebody who's, maybe they're a 22-year-old and you're wondering what you want to do. And they're like, okay, well, facilities management, it includes everything, infrastructure, the technology. How would you say that they get started? There are some colleges that offer it as a major, but how would you get started?
Well, there are several pathways that we find that people, come into this profession. We do get some people that have been working in some of what they call the skilled trades. HVAC, electrical, plumbing, things like that. And they decide they want to get more into the business end of it, the management end of it. And then they move into a facility management type role, get some experience with that. So they may have a lot of depth of knowledge in one particular area, but not necessarily everything else. And that's what I consider myself, is I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I'm not really the subject matter expert in most of them. And that's most facility managers. You're not expected to, it's not a wrench turning profession. So you're not out there fixing things that break. It's understanding, what the impact of, say, a piece of equipment failing during the middle of the day. What does it mean for the business? What risks? What is it causing? Who do I need to get in to fix that? Or is it something we have to replace? And what are our options for that? So it's a lot of business analysis. If you're doing your maintenance job right, chances are you don't have things that fail during the day when you're needing them. You have a planned replacement strategy that says this piece of equipment's reaching end of life. So that's a little bit of what a facility manager is about, just a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Other ways to get in here. We do have accredited degree programs. Our IFMA Foundation is actually the accrediting body for degree programs at the graduate and undergraduate level. And there are a number of schools internationally that offer accredited degrees in facility management. That's not necessary, though, to get into it. We do have some entry-level training available where someone can take some of our classes or get our entry-level certification, which is called the Facility Management Professional, or FMP. And that really gives them a lot of the qualifications to go out and apply for some of the individual contributor, like facility coordinator. That would be considered an entry-level job. You're talking to customers, dispatching workers out for problems, running reports, sort of keeping a lot of the day-to-day basics running. And that's very much a living wage. A facility coordinator may make between $42,000, $45,000 a year. A fully qualified facility manager makes probably somewhere between $110,000 to $120,000 a year. And then you can move up into higher level roles where you're running entire departments or running the real estate and facilities division. So you're doing real estate transactions, managing or overseeing design and construction project activities, moving those into operation and so forth, working with the business units on their space needs and occupancy needs and things like that, space management. A lot of different opportunities there. IFMA offers, several programs. We've also been working, our IFMA Foundation has been applying for different grants. We have one in the city and county of Denver where they have, what they put out was for good green jobs. They wanted to make opportunities available for the underserved communities, either young people or just people in need of some assistance. And they're funding it 100%. And so we're taking people that qualify for that program through these training programs and then helping them work with employers to get their first opportunity.
And this is just in the Denver area right now?
This happens to be one particular in
okay.
the city and county of Denver, but they have other ones going on in New York. I think one in, I want to say Massachusetts, one in Houston. We also have a scholarship program. So every year we hand out, we've given well over $1.5 million of scholarships over a few years to people where they get some amount of money, plus they get to attend our World Workplace Conference, which is our premier event every year, and they get up on a stage and get their scholarship, award handed to them. A lot of employers too are looking at ways to upskill their existing workforce. So they may have some people, like I said, that got into this accidentally but never had any sort of formal training. And so they're coming in and saying, yeah, we want to bring people in and get them some of this training so they get a certification. And part of that is just getting everybody so that they have the same level of knowledge or speaking the same language. It's a lot easier if you have many people, that you don't have people who are talking across each other because they don't have the same level of skill or level of training behind them. Those are some of the opportunities. Again, if you go to just ifma.org and look under membership and education, a lot of those opportunities are available there.
Fantastic. What is your personal favorite part of facilities management, and what is evolving at a speed that you think is really interesting?
I think when I look at facilities management, I've been in operations my entire career. And that's something that I think you either, like doing an operations job or you don't. And so there's two different types of positions that I see in commercial real estate. There's transactional work. That's typically, leasing or design and construction. It has a start, some work and an end. And then you move on to the next project.
Mm-hmm.
I describe operations or facility management is project management. It's just a project that never ends. Because you do have schedules. There are things that you do, on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, annual basis. And then you rinse and repeat and do it over again. But no 2 days are the same. Facility managers often cringe when they come in on Monday morning because there's been 2 extra days for things to break over the weekend. So you never know what kind of surprise you're going to get. And of course, with everything that's going on in the world and just all of these different emerging trends, that adds to either the facility manager's skill requirements or to their scope of responsibilities. And that's where we're seeing a lot of, variation coming into it. I think one of the things you asked about is, what do we see happening in the industry? And just to kind of hit some of the top 3, I can't get away without actually talking about digital transformation as the top one.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's an expansive topic, but first you got to understand that commercial real estate is one of the last industries to go digital. And as a consequence, the level of technological skills and experience tends to be relatively low across the industry. So individuals may need some upskilling to better understand, enterprise systems, data characteristics, analytics, and governance. These are like foundational skills that are necessary to utilize the tsunami of technology and data that's spanning all facets of the built environment. Now, add on top of that cyber safety, cybersecurity. We must understand the difference between IT, or information technology, and OT, operations technology. Many believe that cyber safety is strictly an IT responsibility, but that's not necessarily true. Traditional IT functions know very little about where these digital risks occur and security exposures occur in buildings. That's not their job. It's your job. It's our facility manager job. So the real estate and facilities organizations must upskill themselves to become more competent on where the cyber threat assessments must be done to mitigate those risks. We can't really get away without talking about AI, artificial intelligence. The recent flood of advancements in AI are somewhat overwhelming, both from their potential and their risks. And I challenge anyone to find a product or service today that doesn't have the words AI in their literature. Everybody is claiming to be an AI expert these days. Now, facility managers don't really need to become an AI expert. What they need to learn is enough to be able to separate the hype from the reality.
Right.
So keep in mind, AI models that must be trained. And that means that someone must have that expert knowledge to establish what is normal, what is a normal operating condition, so that it can tell when there's an anomaly, not normal or bad. And as with most technological advancements, I would not expect self-aware, self-healing buildings anytime soon. After all, I'm still waiting for the flying car I was promised back in the 1960s. So I wouldn't get overly excited about that.
No.
The next area that I think is really advancing and expanding our needs is ESG reporting and circular economy. So whether you agree with climate science perspectives or not, climate change is sort of an overarching driver that's really propelling the demand for ESG reporting and circular economy principles to kind of the forefront. Environmental, social, and governance is what ESG stands for. And it's really kind of dominating conversation throughout the organizations today. So I consider ESG to be kind of the next step beyond corporate social responsibility, or CSR reporting,
Right.
which was largely considered to be greenwashing, as many of the claims made in CSR reports really couldn't be easily verified. In particular, the environmental component of ESG may yield some of these reporting standards that are really necessary to track CO2 emissions effectively. So ESG today is primarily being driven by the investment community, who really seeks to, wants verifiable reporting to substantiate their investment. But now we have both consumers and other stakeholders that are seeking the same evidence that the companies they do business with are reputable and trustworthy in their sustainability practices. And now we can, circular economy, that is a new term to many people, but it represents a fundamental shift in economic practices that have stood for more than a century. So in brief, today we kind of practice what's known as the linear economy, which is called take, make, waste. We mine stuff, we make products, and we throw it away in a landfill.
Yep.
Resources are mined, goods are produced, and then disposed of. Circular economy seeks to keep these resources in use, minimizing the need to harvest new raw materials. So product design are designed to be refurbished, reused, or repurposed, with recycling being really the last resort. The adoption of circular economy is really much further along in Europe than it is in the US, but we're really seeing it garnering a lot more attention. And in a lot of ways, it will really be difficult, if not impossible, to reach a state of net zero carbon emissions without adopting circular economy principles. And last but not least was really kind of a sleeper, I think, that is coming out of the post-pandemic world, and that's workplace wellness and well-being. So, we've practiced workplace wellness for some time now, but you might argue that it was mostly just focused on indoor air quality. And what the pandemic did is it sparked an increased awareness on the effects of buildings on the occupant's health. So wellness and well-being have really brought about an increased recognition of the influence facilities has on human physical wellness and mental well-being. And so FMs will be taking an increased responsibility for that occupant experience, engagement, and satisfaction. So that's a new skill set that hasn't been in the FM's core competencies until recently. So there's an example of something new. We do describe this as a profession of lifelong learning because there is always something new coming out that you're going to have to become skilled at or learn more skills in something that you've already been working in.
While we're on that topic, this idea of hybrid working or flex working, some people stay at home while other people come in. A lot of folks, there seems to be some worry around, if we don't have people in the buildings, in the offices, we're all going to, go to waste. All of our buildings are going to be just waste. So how does hybrid working, play into that? And how can, we make sure that workers are happy, coming in and also staying home while the CEOs and the bosses are assured that they are doing the job and that their buildings are not going to waste?
Well, let's put that into perspective a little bit. Hybrid work or work from home was occurring, pre-pandemic. I have worked from home for about 9 years, so that clearly preceded the pandemic. So that was already occurring in many cases. And when you look at, who does this really apply to? It's the knowledge worker component of the workforce, which is really, I think, roughly 24% of the total workforce. Let's just talk US because I have some of those numbers off the top of my head. So, it only applies to some people. The biggest impact is being felt in large metropolitan central business districts. And a lot of the reason for that is because, why do people not want to go back to the office? It was difficult. The commute is often terrible. So again, that's adding a lot of time away from their family and things like that. But what we see and what I've read recently is that number seems to be about 30% lower occupancy compared to pre-pandemic levels like 2019 so far. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't really know what's going to happen over the next couple of 3 years. Humans are social creatures. So we don't really see it as 100% working from home. We don't really see it as 100% return to the office. So somewhere there's this, happy medium. Is it 3.5 days a week or, rough on average? Where does that land? And what does that mean then for these central business districts? What does it mean for occupancy? You may not need as much physical space as you have today if you have fewer people in the office on any given day. So obviously you can't bring everybody back on one day and then have it vacant the rest of the time. That doesn't make sense. But where the impact is also being felt is around those supporting businesses, the restaurants, the retail, the dry cleaner, the things that surround it and were supported by this population. So there's probably a reset that will go on in these central business districts around what the purpose of some of these buildings are. And it actually gets down even to zoning codes. Like they want to take what was a Class A office building and repurpose parts of it to do different things. Mm-hmm. Well, they, like in some places, you couldn't operate a doggy daycare because that wasn't part of the zoning. They have to change the zoning laws to allow some of those things. They've talked about trying to convert some buildings into residential. Well, that's not always possible based on their design. When you think about it, they were an office building. Yes, they had a couple of restrooms in there. But, when you talk about turning it into apartments and all that extra plumbing and all that extra stuff that needs to go in there, it may not lend itself to that kind of repurposing. Some do, some don't.
Right.
So what's been happening more recently in the commercial real estate space, or I would say the investment space, is sort of a perfect storm of things that are happening. Of course, we have the pandemic. We have the the less occupancy, so 30% less occupancy in some of these buildings. We've had 10 interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. Many buildings have mortgages that are coming due, but they can't refinance because it's unaffordable. And in those central business districts, those buildings, their valuation is becoming less.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that perfect storm. Now, this isn't going to last forever. They will figure it out. These are a lot of very rich, smart people that own these buildings and hold the debt. So, they're not gonna. It's not going to fail, but we don't know how long or when that's going to occur. So, we will see some changes coming out of it. And frankly, in other countries, we've seen much more of a return to work. In some of the rural areas, we've seen a lot more return to work. Some people are going, I got 4 kids at home. I can't work from home. I have to get out of the house and get back to the office. And there's other reasons why people may feel that. Some people, like I said, are more suited to working, I would say, remotely. They have the discipline to do it, but they also can focus more. They actually are more productive in that environment. If you don't have that discipline, you may not be as productive. I think in many cases, leadership or managers are looking to say, how do I determine, whether somebody's working? It's really about managing outcomes. Whatever they're tasked to do, are they getting it done? Whether it happens at 3 a.m. in the morning or not, or on a weekend or whenever, does that matter?
Right.
Does it, yes, if you're doing a customer service job where you have to be on the phone 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., yes, there's some requirements there. But in a lot of these knowledge worker jobs, it's about, are you getting the desired results? Are you achieving those desired results? And if you can do that, does it matter when it occurs? So
right.
that's really a management issue, I think. Some managers have a harder time managing remotely than others. They've never had that opportunity or that experience. And so they have to learn some new skills on how do you effectively manage people when you can't open your door and see them every day.
Right. Yeah.
And again, it goes back to managing, is it healthy for some people? You may not be able to detect that they're having some issues and need some assistance, and you wouldn't pick up on that if you don't have some. You can't always do it across a Zoom call.
True. I just think it's fascinating how facilities management really is so broad and wide. I just want to ask you, what motivates you personally to be in facilities management?
Well, personally, I like a challenge. So I say I've been in operations my entire career. I have. But once I get something operating stable and it's pretty much, business as usual, I get bored. So give me a new challenge. Give me a new problem to solve. What's the next big opportunity? Or going into an organization that maybe is a little bit in a state of disarray and needs to, have some assistance and bring some stability and some consistency. Operations is a lot about process. You got to have you can't manage what you don't measure. And in order to measure something, you got to have a process around it. Otherwise, what are you measuring? How do you know whether or not you're achieving results? It's about setting up a set of regular operating processes, making sure people are able to perform those processes, measuring those results and saying, are we achieving the objectives that we need to achieve? I look at, it's about, process, people, and tools. If you draw that as a pyramid, many organizations attack it in exactly the wrong order. they go buy a piece of software that they think is going to fix all their organizational problems. And that's not it. You start by defining what processes do you need in order to operate your business? What needs to get done? Document those. You need to have that workflow laid out. Then do you have the right people to execute those processes? Are they adequately trained? Do they have the right skill set? Do you have that right mix? And then you go find some technology to support the process and the people. So it's the last thing you do, not the first thing you do.
Right.
Because software has never fixed anything. I call it's a digital tin can where we store data. And it can actually help your productivity, but it doesn't fix problems on its own.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it is people who put things together and fix things and who are there and show up. Even back to what you're talking about, cities. It's the people who show up who, add to the culture, to the downtown areas and to offices. So definitely people. Do you have anything else you'd like to add about facilities management and your role that you just started beginning of July, and what you're looking forward to most in that role?
The pandemic required businesses worldwide to kind of pivot into survival mode. And they had to implement new operational procedures and means to keep revenue flowing. And unfortunately, not all endured that turmoil. Not all survived. So I'm happy to say that IFMA actually emerged in very sound condition and kind of ready to move ahead. So the thing that I'm excited about as I begin my term is that we're able to really focus our attention fully on the profession and not on, the association, if you will. It's back on advancing this profession. So FM is really entering a new era. We're evolving our core competencies and enjoying newfound recognition of the role that the profession plays in organizational success. So for me, that's what makes it sort of an exciting time to be in facility management, as well as being a part of leading this organization.
Right. And I think one of the interesting things we talked about earlier is that FM has just recently been in the BLS as far as 2018. So only 5 years. It's had
correct.
It's enjoyed its moment in time of being, here is something you can be when you grow up. A facility manager. So that's fairly, in its infancy, even though, the industry has been around. So it's a very exciting time, definitely.
Yeah, that is one of the things that we've done to advance the profession. Again, IFMA's mission has been to transform FM into a recognized profession. In other words, turning it from the accidental profession into a career of choice.
Right.
So many of the things that we've done, getting the accredited degree programs, the Bureau of Labor Statistics standard occupational classification, it's actually code 11-3013 if anybody's interested. You can look it up. Was one of those things that moves us further into being a legitimate recognized profession. We also have an ISO standard. I actually have sat on the technical committee, the U.S. Technical Advisory Group, or TAG, for the ISO 41000 facility management standard for about eight or 9 years now, I think. ISO standards take a long time to get out the door. But it also is another level of recognition. We have an international standard for facility management now. So, you look at all of these things collectively, the association has been a large part of bringing those things together to make this and legitimize this as a profession and make it a career. Like I said, not just a job, not just something you show up and, collect a paycheck. There is a career here.
Right. And that's very, very exciting. And we're so glad to hear that. So thank you so much for your time, Dean. I really appreciate it. And I hope the listeners got to enjoy it. And can you give again the IFMA website in case people don't know it by now?
Yeah, very easy. IFMA.org. And so pretty much all things IFMA you can find there, and tentacles kind of go out.
Right.
As IFMA members, you get access to a bunch of other things. We have a bi-monthly magazine. We have a social media type platform where people can go ask questions for problems they're having, and their peers will get on and say, "Yeah, I've had that problem. Here's how I fixed it." So there's lots and lots of other resources you have available once somebody is a member of IFMA. So again, all that information is available on the website as well.
Fantastic. And we'll also have that in our show notes as well on our website at www.openworksweb.com. So we're going to end it here. And we're so excited to see what's in the future, what the future holds for you, Dean. And if it's anything like your past, it's going to be very exciting and filled of adventures and new things. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Welcome to The Clean Slate, a podcast where we chat about facilities management, commercial cleaning, and keeping the working world safe.